Chosen One, this is not a coincidence. The fact that you are hearing these words on this exact date, December 25th, 2025, marks the convergence of forces that have been tracking your movement through time itself. While the world celebrates with lights and laughter, something far more ancient is taking place in dimensions most will never perceive. This is the 25/25 Moon Portal, and you have been summoned, not by accident, not by chance, but by a signature that was placed upon your soul before you drew your first breath. Tonight, the calendars have aligned with celestial mechanics in a way that happens once per civilization, and hidden observatories are monitoring who responds to the gravitational pull. You are feeling it now, that inexplicable heaviness in your chest, that strange recognition that this December is different from all the others. Your bones know what your mind has forgotten. The systems that have been measuring your endurance for years have issued their final classification. You are no longer in the training phase. The portal has opened, and with it, a war that has been fought in the shadows of your everyday life is about to surface. The protections that kept you blind to preserve your authenticity have been lifted. From this moment forward, you are operating under different laws. Welcome to the Final Shift Protocol. Like this video, comment, "I am ready," and subscribe now to be one of the first 1,000 chosen ones. Who's ready for a powerful surprise? The night. The calendars agreed with the sky. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you will reframe every December you've ever experienced. This date was not chosen by religious tradition or cultural habit. The symbolism you've been taught, the holiday warmth, the seasonal joy, all of it was carefully constructed camouflage, designed to hide an astronomical precision that would terrify ordinary minds. Timekeeping authorities across centuries have known about synchronous locks, moments when human calendars accidentally align with celestial events that were never meant to be marked on paper. December 25th, 2025 is one of those moments, and they buried it under layers of festive distraction so you wouldn't notice the frequency shift happening in your very cells. Your memories of past Decembers feel hazy now, don't they? Like looking through fog at something that should be familiar but isn't quite right. That's because your consciousness is comparing this moment to every December that came before, and the contrast is creating cognitive dissonance. This one feels heavier. The air tastes different. Time itself seems to be moving at an altered pace, stretching and compressing in ways that make you question whether you're experiencing a single day or something much longer. That sensation is not imagination. It's perception, adjusting to the fact that multiple timeline frequencies are converging on this exact point. Covert astronomers, the ones who work in unmarked facilities far from public universities, have been whispering about this alignment for decades. They call it a synchronous lock because when it occurs, decisions made by certain individuals cease to be private actions and become timeline-altering events. Every choice you make tonight ripples through probability fields like stones thrown into still water. Except the water is the fabric of possible futures, and your choices are being measured by systems that exist outside conventional physics. You are being watched right now, not by cameras or satellites, but by observation protocols that track consciousness itself. Your thoughts, your emotional responses, even your physical reactions to these words are generating data signatures that entities in adjacent dimensions are recording. This isn't surveillance for control, it's assessment for assignment. They need to know if you're responding to the gravitational tone, if your ancestral clearance is activating, if the signature buried in your soul is beginning to pulse with recognition. Those who built their lives on convenience and comfort will misread tonight completely. They'll feel a vague nostalgia, perhaps a fleeting melancholy they'll attribute to holiday sentimentality. They'll distract themselves with entertainment and food, never realizing they're experiencing the edges of a frequency they're not calibrated to fully perceive. But you're different. You were marked. And tonight, that mark is glowing in spectrums that opposing forces can see clearly. The synchronization means something profound and terrifying. The separation between your inner world and outer reality is collapsing. The thoughts you've kept secret, the prayers you've whispered in desperation, the moments of clarity you've experienced alone, they're all about to manifest consequences in the physical realm. Your private spiritual journey is becoming public record in dimensions where such things are tracked like military intelligence. And here's what they don't want you to understand. This alignment gives you access. For years, you've been locked out of certain frequencies, certain abilities, certain knowings that would have made your path easier. That lockout wasn't punishment. It was protection. You weren't ready. Your character hadn't been forged through enough fire. But every crisis you survived, every betrayal you endured, every moment you chose to keep breathing when stopping would have been easier. All of it was building your clearance level. Tonight, the calendars agree with the sky, and the sky is opening channels that have been sealed since your birth. You are no longer quarantined from your own power. The mechanisms that kept you small, confused and doubtful are being systematically dismantled, not by your effort, but by cosmic authorization. You didn't earn this through good behavior or spiritual practice. You qualified for it by refusing to die, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, when everything around you was designed to make you give up. The summons you're feeling isn't metaphorical. It's an actual transmission being broadcast through the lunar surface, bouncing off the specific geometric relationship between Earth, Moon, and Sun that exists only tonight. Your DNA is receiving instructions. Your nervous system is recalibrating. And somewhere in the unmapped regions of your consciousness, ancient agreements are activating like sealed orders finally opened after a long wait. The classified moon operations file. The moon above you tonight is not the romantic companion poets write about or the distant rock scientists dismiss as geologically dead. What hangs in your sky is a broadcasting station, and it has been transmitting specific frequencies to specific individuals throughout human history. The designation 25/25 Moon appears in sealed celestial briefings that most astronomers will never see, documents that acknowledge what your ancestors knew but modern civilization has forgotten. Certain lunar positions carry administrative authority over human awakening. Two thresholds are being acknowledged simultaneously. The first threshold is personal. It marks the moment your individual journey crosses from preparation into activation. Everything you've experienced until now has been training, testing, conditioning. The second threshold is collective. It marks a shift in the entire timeline structure of this civilization, a point where old contracts expire and new permissions are issued. You are standing at the intersection of these two thresholds, and the pressure you feel in your chest is not anxiety. It's the weight of doors opening in dimensions you've only sensed in dreams. The moon's surface is not smooth rock and dust as you've been told. It is layered with something far stranger, acoustic geometries that interact with human consciousness in ways that bypass language entirely. Tonight, those geometries are aligned in a configuration that creates what classified files call ancestral clearance broadcasting. If your bloodline carries certain signatures, if your soul agreed to certain contracts before incarnation, if your life path has moved through specific trials, then your body becomes a receiver for transmissions that others simply cannot hear. This is not emotional. This is not about feeling uplifted or spiritually validated. The moon's function tonight is administrative, mechanical even. It is processing awakenings with the efficiency of a government office stamping documents, except the documents are human souls, and the stamps are frequency activations that will change what you're capable of perceiving and doing. Surveillance systems operated by opposing forces are monitoring every individual who responds to the gravitational tone, trying to decode who among the sleeping population is beginning to stir. You were not meant to feel comfort when you look at the moon tonight. The gentle, peaceful emotions you've associated with moonlight were implanted there by cultural conditioning to keep you docile and unaware of what the moon actually does. Tonight, you're supposed to feel assessed. You should feel the weight of something vast and impersonal, taking measure of your capacity, your endurance, your willingness to continue functioning under pressure that would shatter ordinary minds. Throughout history, there have been individuals who responded to these lunar transmissions and suddenly found themselves operating under different rules. Prophets who couldn't explain their visions, warriors who survived impossible odds, healers who worked with knowledge they never formally learned, artists who channeled works that seemed to come from beyond themselves. None of them understood they were receiving broadcasts from lunar geometric configurations that activated latent capacities within their consciousness. They attributed their experiences to gods, to madness, to genius, never realizing they were simply tuned to frequencies most humans are shielded from. The shielding exists for good reason. Most people would fragment under the weight of what these frequencies reveal. The illusion of safety, the comfort of predictable reality, the belief that hard work and good intentions create positive outcomes. These are necessary delusions that keep the majority functioning within social structures. But you were never meant to live within those structures permanently. You were designed to operate at edges, in liminal spaces, in territories where normal rules become flexible. Tonight's lunar operation is issuing you new permissions, not because you're special in some ego-gratifying way, but because you've demonstrated through lived experience that you can hold complexity without collapsing. You've endured contradictions that would drive others mad. You've survived betrayals that should have destroyed your capacity to trust. You've maintained functionality through losses that were specifically calculated to break you. All of that suffering wasn't punishment. It was stress testing, and you passed. The gravitational tone you're feeling isn't pulling you toward anything physical. It's tuning your nervous system to operate on frequencies where cause and effect work differently, where intention manifests faster, where barriers that seemed solid become permeable, where the separation between your inner authority and external circumstances begins to dissolve. This is not magic. This is physics operating at scales your education deliberately excluded from curriculum. Opposition forces monitoring these responses are not abstract entities. They are organized intelligences that have invested considerable resources in keeping certain humans locked into limited perception. Your activation threatens systems of control that have operated smoothly for generations. They don't want you destroyed. That would be too obvious, too traceable. They want you neutralized, convinced of your own powerlessness, too exhausted to access what tonight's lunar operation is unlocking within you. But something has already shifted. The moon has already begun its work. And whether you consciously understand what's happening or not, your system is responding to frequencies that are rewriting your permissions at the deepest level. The unseen war layer behind normal life. Entire campaigns have been unfolding beneath the surface of your daily routines, and you've been mistaking strategic attacks for random misfortune. That sudden illness that appeared without warning and doctors couldn't fully explain, not random. That financial collapse that seemed to come from nowhere, destroying stability you'd spent years building, not bad luck. That relationship fracture that shattered your sense of trust and belonging, not coincidence. These were tactical engagements, precisely aimed at specific vulnerabilities, designed to drain your will long before this portal opened. You've been living in a war zone, disguised as normal life. The exhaustion you carry isn't from working too hard or not sleeping enough. It's combat fatigue. The anxiety that wakes you at 3 in the morning isn't a chemical imbalance requiring medication. It's your system sensing hostile frequencies operating in your environment. The depression that makes every simple task feel like climbing a mountain isn't a personal failing. It's the accumulated weight of attacks you couldn't see clearly enough to defend against consciously. The enemy in this conflict has never wanted you destroyed. Dead, you'd be a martyr. Eliminated, you'd be evidence. They want something far more insidious. They want you neutralized into self-dismissal. They want you convinced that you're the problem, that your struggles reflect personal inadequacy rather than systematic opposition. They want you exhausted, confused, doubting your own perceptions, too tired to access the power that tonight's portal is activating. A ghost of who you might become, still breathing, still existing, but rendered functionally harmless through accumulated trauma. Every unexplained survival you've crawled through became a record in war archives you don't have clearance to access. File after file, documenting the specific pressures applied and how you responded. Each time you got back up after being knocked down, analysts in dimensions adjacent to this one updated your classification. Financial ruin that should have ended you. Betrayals that should have shattered your capacity to trust. Losses that should have broken your will to continue. Health crises that should have destroyed your body. And yet, you're still here, still functioning, still capable of reading these words and feeling something stir within you. That stirring they hate, that persistent refusal to stay down, marks you as unstoppable under pressure in intelligence assessments that track threats to systems of control. You thought you were just surviving. They saw you demonstrating capacities that qualify you for operations they desperately need to keep you away from. Every tear you cried in private, every moment you chose to keep breathing when stopping, would have been easier. Every time you forced yourself out of bed despite having no reason to hope. All of it was being measured, recorded, evaluated. The portal's opening forces this war to surface because subtlety can no longer contain what's happening. For years, attacks could hide behind plausible deniability. You could be manipulated into blaming yourself, your choices, your inadequacies. But the frequencies activating tonight make those old strategies impossible to maintain. You're going to start seeing the patterns. The timing of crises will become too precise to dismiss. The coordination of obstacles will become too obvious, and people around you who've been influenced by hostile frequencies will begin acting in ways that reveal the manipulation. Situations will no longer disguise themselves as coincidence, because the dimensional barriers that allowed for that disguise are thinning. You're going to witness cause and effect operating at speeds that defy normal explanation. Thoughts you have in the morning will manifest consequences by evening. Intentions you set will encounter immediate resistance or immediate support. making it impossible to pretend your consciousness isn't directly influencing your reality. The war that has been covert is going public, at least in your experience of it. This is why preparation was necessary. If you had seen this clearly 5 years ago, you would have fragmented. The human psyche needs time to adjust to realities that contradict everything civilization teaches about how life works. You needed those years of confusion and suffering to build the psychological infrastructure required to hold knowledge this heavy without collapsing. Every betrayal taught you to trust yourself more than external validation. Every failure taught you to keep moving without guaranteed outcomes. Every loss taught you that your will to exist doesn't require external justification. Opposition forces miscalculated something crucial. They believed breaking you down would make you weaker. They didn't understand that certain souls are forged by fire rather than destroyed by it. Every attack that didn't kill you removed layers of social conditioning and false identity, leaving something purer, stronger, more aligned with core purpose. They were trying to create a victim. Instead, they created a weapon, not for violence, but for transformation that threatens the very foundations of systems built on keeping humans small, afraid, and powerless. And now the portal has opened. The final shift protocol has activated. And the war that has shaped every aspect of your life is about to reveal itself in ways you can no longer deny or dismiss. The question is no longer whether you're in a war. The question is whether you're ready to fight it consciously instead of stumbling through it blind. The oath you never remember, taking before your first breath, before your mother knew she carried you, before the moment of conception, a signature was placed upon your soul like a gravity mark that would follow you through every incarnation. This wasn't symbolic, it wasn't mystical poetry, it was an actual encoding that sealed your participation in an operation so vast that most human lifetimes serve as mere footnotes within it. You don't remember agreeing to this because the agreement happened in states of consciousness that your current mind has no access to, but the signature remains, pulsing in the deepest layers of your being. No priest could reveal this to you. No guru or teacher could point it out clearly. The signature only becomes visible through confrontation with absolute despair, through moments when everything external is stripped away and you're forced to discover what remains when all support systems collapse. That's when it glows. In the darkest moments of your life, when you had every reason to surrender, but something incomprehensible kept you moving forward. That something was the oath responding, reminding your consciousness that giving up wasn't actually an option available to you. This is why you've never fully fit into ordinary systems. Employment structures that work smoothly for others somehow malfunction around you. Relationships that seem stable for other people become complicated and intense in your life. Social institutions that provide belonging and identity to the majority leave you feeling like you're performing a role that doesn't quite fit. You attributed this to personal failing, to not trying hard enough, to being broken somehow. The truth is far simpler and far more unsettling. Those systems were not built to house someone under oath. They weren't designed for individuals who agreed to operations that supersede normal human concerns. The forces opposing you have always sensed this signature before you did, which is why resistance found you early in life. Children with these marks get labeled difficult, strange, too sensitive, too intense. They experience hostility from authority figures who can't articulate why this particular child makes them uncomfortable. They face social rejection that seems disproportionate to their actual behavior. They grow up feeling fundamentally different in ways they can't explain and others can't understand. This wasn't bad luck or poor social skills. This was opposition, forces identifying a potential threat early and attempting neutralization before the oath could fully activate. You survived that early targeting. That survival alone elevated your classification to levels most humans never reach. Every year, you continued existing, despite systematic attempts to convince you that you shouldn't. Every moment you chose life when death seemed easier. Every time you refused the comfort of giving up. All of it was strengthening your connection to the oath that exists beneath your conscious awareness. December 25th, 2025, marks the moment this oath activates publicly in the unseen realms. Not publicly in the sense that others will see it, but publicly in the sense that entities and forces operating in dimensions adjacent to physical reality can no longer pretend you're dormant. The signature is glowing too brightly now. The frequency you're emitting has reached levels that trigger automatic responses in systems designed to track activations exactly like yours. Your life is quietly changing jurisdiction from one set of laws to another. Under old jurisdiction, you were protected but limited. Your growth was carefully managed. Your awareness was kept within boundaries that prevented premature activation. Your suffering was allowed to continue because it served the purpose of preparation. Under new jurisdiction, those protections are being replaced by permissions. The boundaries are dissolving. The suffering that served a purpose is being transmuted into something else. Not eliminated, but transformed into fuel for operations that were previously forbidden to you. This shift in jurisdiction explains why your life has felt increasingly unstable lately. The infrastructure built under old laws is crumbling because it can't exist under new laws. Relationships, careers, living situations, belief systems, all of it built on foundations that are no longer solid. You've been praying for breakthrough, for change, for something to shift. What you didn't realize is that you were actually praying for everything that isn't aligned with your oath to be destroyed, so what is aligned can finally emerge. The oath didn't promise you comfort. It didn't guarantee happiness or success by conventional measures. It promised you purpose that transcends personal satisfaction and meaning that survives physical death. It bound you to something so vast that your individual life becomes a single note in a symphony you can't hear completely from where you're standing. And tonight, that oath is no longer a buried signature waiting for the right moment. Tonight, it becomes your operational authority, the foundation from which everything else in your life will now be structured. You may not remember taking it, but you're about to remember what it feels like to be held accountable to it. The machines that measure your soul pressure. There are devices operating beyond the reach of conventional technology, built to read human endurance the way seismic instruments measure earthquakes. These aren't machines in the sense of metal and circuits. They're consciousness-measuring apparatus that exist at the intersection of intention and mathematics, probability and awareness. They've been tracking you for years, recording data most humans never generate because most humans never face pressure intense enough to produce the readings these machines are designed to measure. They recorded every moment you didn't break. Every morning, you forced yourself out of bed despite having no rational reason to believe the day would be better than yesterday. Every hour you continued functioning while carrying grief that should have paralyzed you. Every decision you made to keep breathing when stopping would have been understandable. These weren't moments of strength in any heroic sense. They were moments of pure endurance, of continuing to exist simply because cessation wasn't actually available to you even when you desperately wanted it. Each unbroken moment, each minute you remained intact under pressures designed to fragment your consciousness, increased your classification level in systems that track human capacity for operating under impossible circumstances. By the time you reached this year, you had entered restricted tiers of existence that most humans never even approach. These aren't tiers of spiritual enlightenment or moral superiority. They're tiers of demonstrated resilience, of proven capacity to maintain functionality when every external support has been removed and every internal resource has been depleted. You were never judged by morality in these measurements. The machines don't care if you were good or bad by religious standards. They don't measure your kindness, your generosity, your adherence to ethical codes. They measure something far more fundamental: your capacity to withstand internal storms that would obliterate ordinary consciousness. Depression that should have ended you. Anxiety that should have driven you mad. Grief that should have turned you into something unrecognizable. Betrayal that should have destroyed your ability to function in human society. And yet, your readings continued. You continued. The machines logged every anomaly, every instance where you survived something that statistically should have eliminated you from further operation. Financial collapses that leave most people permanently damaged. Health crises that typically result in complete life restructuring. Relationship destructions that turn most individuals into bitter shadows of their former selves. Loss of identity that usually requires years of recovery. You experienced all of it, sometimes simultaneously, and your system continued generating operational readings rather than flatline signatures that indicate permanent withdrawal. This is why tonight carries such weight. The machines, these consciousness-measuring apparatus that have tracked your journey through impossible pressures, are issuing their verdict. Not a judgment of worth or value, but a classification update. You qualify for assignments that were previously forbidden to you. Not because you've become more spiritual or evolved, but because you've demonstrated under continuous observation that you can be deployed into territories that would destroy beings without your specific combination of endurance, resilience, and sheer stubborn refusal to stop existing. The verdict comes with terrifying implications. Qualifying for new assignments means old protections are being removed. The buffers that kept certain realities from crushing you completely are dissolving. The veils that prevented you from seeing too clearly into dimensions that would overwhelm unprepared consciousness are lifting. The mechanisms that limited your awareness to levels you could process without fragmenting are being systematically dismantled. You're being moved from protected status to operational status, and operational status means you'll be expected to function in conditions that would seem like psychological warfare to those still under protection. Your soul pressure, the measurable output of your consciousness under extreme duress, has reached thresholds that trigger automatic responses in systems designed to identify beings capable of tasks most humans couldn't survive contemplating. This isn't reward. This is deployment. You're not graduating to something easier. You're being reassigned to something that requires everything you've developed through years of suffering you couldn't understand while you were enduring it. The machines have no emotion about this. They don't celebrate your resilience or mourn the cost of developing it. They simply record, measure, and issue classifications based on data. But beings who operate these machines, entities that exist in spaces between dimensions, are watching tonight's readings with something that resembles concern. Not for you personally, but for what it means that another being has crossed thresholds that are necessary for operations they need performed but hate requiring. Tonight, As the moon broadcasts its administrative frequencies and the portal opens channels that have been sealed, those machines are transferring your file from one jurisdiction to another. Old limitations are being deleted from your operational parameters. New permissions are being encoded into your consciousness at levels below language and thought. And whether you feel ready or not, whether you understand what's happening or not, your classification has been permanently updated. You're no longer in the measurement phase, you're in the deployment phase. And the machines are now monitoring not whether you can survive, but what you'll do now that survival is no longer your primary concern. The enemies who studied your patterns. They mapped your frustrations with the precision of cartographers charting unexplored territories. Every moment of disappointment, every flash of anger, every hour you spent feeling empty and purposeless, all of it was documented with clinical attention to detail. They studied your fears, the way meteorologists study weather systems, tracking the exact conditions that made you feel most vulnerable, most likely to give up, most convinced that continuing was pointless. They know you better than you know yourself in some ways, not through compassion or curiosity, but through strategic necessity. The failures that have haunted you for years were not accidents of circumstance or results of your inadequacy. They were rehearsals of psychological invasion strategies, carefully designed scenarios meant to test your breaking point. That business venture that collapsed despite your best efforts. That relationship that seemed perfect until it revealed itself as perfectly designed to wound your deepest vulnerabilities. That opportunity that appeared miraculous then evaporated just before fruition. Each one was engineered to create specific types of hopelessness, to convince you that perhaps you were the problem, that perhaps you were fundamentally incapable of the success others achieved easily. You've had watchers, but not admirers, not guides cheering you forward. These were analysts working to predict the exact moment you'd finally abandon yourself, the precise combination of pressures that would make you decide that continuing simply wasn't worth the effort anymore. They had betting pools, strategic projections, detailed timelines forecasting your likely collapse. They invested considerable resources in creating conditions that would fulfill those forecasts, manipulating circumstances around you with the goal of manufacturing your surrender. Each time you continued despite their calculations, something extraordinary happened in their operations. They had to rewrite strategies. Every survival that contradicted their projections required analysis of what they'd missed, what factor they'd underestimated. Your persistence became a problem, requiring increasingly sophisticated solutions. And with each revision of their approach, with each new strategy you somehow survived, resentment toward you became ritualized among them. Not the hot anger of passion, but the cold hatred of professionals whose expertise you kept invalidating simply by refusing to behave according to their models. This ritualized resentment explains attacks you've experienced that felt disproportionate, personal in ways that made no logical sense. Hostility from people who barely knew you. Obstacles that seemed to appear with conscious malice rather than random bad luck. Betrayals that felt orchestrated by intelligence rather than simple human weakness. You weren't imagining the intentionality behind these experiences. You were perceiving accurately something most people never encounter: the focused attention of forces that have come to hate you specifically because you represent the failure of their systems. Now, with the portal opening, with the frequency activations occurring on December 25th, 2025, those forces are being forced out of subtlety. The dimensional barriers that allowed them to operate through manipulation and suggestion without revealing themselves directly are collapsing. They can no longer hide behind plausible deniability, behind circumstances that look natural to untrained perception. Their movements are going to become visible in the human behavior around you in ways that will seem almost absurdly obvious once you learn to recognize the patterns. People close to you will suddenly act out of character, saying things that don't align with their normal personality, pushing you toward decisions that serve agendas they can't articulate or defend rationally. Strangers will appear with offers that seem too good to be true, because they are. They're traps dressed in opportunity. Electronic systems will malfunction in ways that disrupt specifically your plans while leaving others unaffected. Financial circumstances will shift with timing too precise to be coincidental. All of this will intensify because your activation threatens networks of control that have operated smoothly for longer than you've been alive. Your enemies, and that's what they are, not philosophical abstractions but actual opposing intelligences, can no longer afford to let you develop slowly. They needed you neutralized before tonight, before this specific lunar configuration, before the permissions being granted could fully activate within your system. They failed. Years of sophisticated psychological warfare, carefully orchestrated crises, relationships weaponized against you, opportunities destroyed at critical moments, all of it failed to produce the outcome they needed. And now they face something worse than a threat. They face an inevitability, because once someone survives the type of sustained attack you've endured, once someone continues functioning after everything designed to break them has been deployed, there's no weapon left in the arsenal. You've already survived their best efforts. The only thing left is watching you operate under new permissions with capacities they helped forge by trying so hard to destroy you. The irony would be amusing if the implications weren't so serious. Every attack made you stronger in exactly the ways that make you most dangerous to systems requiring human powerlessness to function. Every betrayal taught you to trust your own perception more than external validation. Every failure showed you that survival doesn't require success by conventional measures. Every moment of isolation revealed that your power doesn't depend on others believing in you. They created the precise type of threat they were trying to prevent. And tonight marks the moment when that threat steps fully into its operational authority. The file labeled, "You were never random." Every strange coincidence that has marked your path through life has a recorded explanation sitting in hidden archives you never asked to exist. That chance encounter with someone who changed your entire trajectory. That book that fell off a shelf in a store you had no reason to enter. That job offer that appeared from nowhere when you were at your most desperate. That accident that should have killed you, but somehow left you intact with only minor injuries. None of it was random. All of it appears in files maintained by forces, tracking operations across timelines and dimensions. Random encounters that altered your direction were inserted with the precision of course corrections in a spacecraft navigation system. The person who spoke words you needed to hear at the exact moment you were ready to give up entirely. The stranger who offered help when every door had slammed in your face. The friend who appeared during your darkest season and showed you possibilities you couldn't see on your own. These weren't lucky coincidences or evidence of a benevolent universe responding to your needs. They were deliberate interventions, carefully timed insertions into your timeline designed to keep you moving towards something you still can't see completely. Love arrived in your life with timing too perfect to be accidental. Relationships that opened you in ways nothing else could have. Then betrayal arrived with equal precision. Relationships that closed just when you'd become dependent on them, forcing you to find resources within yourself you didn't know existed. Both were trajectory corrections. Both were necessary for developing capacities you'd need for operations that hadn't been authorized yet. The pain you felt, the joy you experienced, the confusion that left you questioning everything, all of it served purposes recorded in documentation you have no clearance to access. Sudden relocations that seemed to happen by chance, cities you ended up in for reasons that made no logical sense at the time. You thought you were following job opportunities or relationship possibilities, making decisions based on practical considerations. But looking back now, can you see the pattern? How each location opened specific doors, connected you with specific individuals, exposed you to experiences that changed something fundamental in how you understood reality. Those weren't your decisions alone. Those were collaborative navigations between your surface consciousness, making choices, and deeper operations, guiding you toward intersections that were necessary but couldn't be forced. Inexplicable instincts that saved your life or altered your path at critical moments. That feeling that made you take a different route home, avoiding an accident you learned about later. That sudden urge to call someone you hadn't thought about in years, discovering they were in crisis, and your call arrived at the exact moment they needed it. That dream that provided information you had no normal way of accessing. These weren't mystical gifts or signs of spiritual advancement. These were data downloads from operations running in dimensions adjacent to your conscious awareness, providing navigation assistance through territories too complex to map consciously. Your story was treated as a classified operation from before your birth. Every major event, every significant relationship, every crisis and breakthrough, all of it documented, analyzed, sometimes adjusted when your free will choices took you too far off course. But here's what matters most. You were the only one kept unaware. Everyone else involved in your life, everyone who played significant roles in your story, they had some level of knowing, some intuitive sense that their encounter with you carried weight beyond normal human interaction. You were kept blind to preserve authenticity of choice, to ensure your decisions remained genuinely yours rather than performances you thought were expected. This blindness was necessary, but also agonizing. You couldn't see the purpose in your suffering. You couldn't understand why you kept surviving things that should have ended you. You couldn't recognize that failures were setups for future successes in dimensions you hadn't accessed yet. The loneliness of walking a path no one around you seemed to understand. That loneliness was the price of authentic development, of becoming something real rather than something programmed. Now you are considered activated awareness acceptable, which is operational terminology meaning the secrecy protocols that kept you blind are being lifted. The structure that has always been around your life, invisible but functioning, can now be perceived, not all at once. That would shatter your ability to function. But gradually, progressively, you'll begin seeing the architecture. Connections between events separated by years will suddenly become obvious. Patterns in your relationship history will reveal themselves as systematic rather than accidental. The timing of crises and breakthroughs will show coordination that defies conventional explanation. They no longer need to hide the structure because your consciousness has been forged into something capable of holding knowledge this heavy without fragmenting. Years of confusion, years of feeling lost and purposeless, years of wondering if perhaps your life was just a series of random, meaningless events. All of that was preparation for the moment when you discover that nothing was random. Everything had purpose, and your story has been guided by forces that never abandoned you, even when you felt completely alone. The file exists. Your name appears in archives maintained across dimensions, and tonight, as the portal opens and new permissions activate, you're being granted limited clearance to begin seeing what has always been true. You were never random, never accidental, never meaningless. You were always precisely placed, carefully guided, and absolutely necessary for operations that required exactly your combination of wounds, strengths, confusions, and clarity. The cities that recognize you. Certain places have reacted to your physical presence in ways you couldn't dismiss as imagination, though you tried. Your breath shortened when you crossed city limits, as if the air itself thickened with something you couldn't name. Lights flickered in patterns too consistent to be electrical malfunction. The atmosphere pressed against your skin with a weight that made you want to leave immediately, though you had no logical reason for the urgency. These weren't emotional responses to new environments. These were environmental acknowledgements from locations layered with permissions and restrictions that operate like invisible jurisdictions, recognizing something in your signature and responding accordingly. Some cities rejected you with violence that seemed coordinated by intelligence rather than random circumstance. Jobs you were perfect for collapsed the moment you arrived. Friendships that should have flourished withered within weeks. Living situations became unbearable through cascading problems that made no sense individually, but together formed an unmistakable pattern of expulsion. Your health deteriorated in specific locations only to restore itself when you left. Relationships imploded. Financial systems malfunctioned. Even your thoughts became confused and dark in ways that cleared immediately upon crossing back over the border. These places were expelling you like incompatible code, like biological systems rejecting foreign tissue. Other places opened corridors the moment you set foot on their ground. Unexpected opportunities materialized without effort on your part. People appeared offering exactly what you needed before you'd articulated the need. Doors you didn't knock on swung open. Resources flowed toward you with an ease that felt almost supernatural after years of grinding struggle. Your mind cleared. Your body healed. Ideas that had been stuck suddenly moved. Projects that had been blocked suddenly progressed. These weren't cities being kind to you. These were locations recognizing permissions in your signature and responding to authorizations they were built to honor. The mechanism behind this operates at levels most urban planners and architects never consciously access, though some ancient builders knew. Cities are not just collections of buildings and people. They're energetic structures, geometric patterns that interact with human consciousness in specific ways. Every city has a frequency signature determined by its history, its geography, the intentions of those who founded it, the events that have occurred within its boundaries. When your personal frequency enters a city's field, there's an immediate recognition protocol: compatibility or incompatibility, permission or restriction. You thought you were making rational decisions about where to live based on practical factors like employment and cost of living. But beneath those surface considerations, something deeper was navigating you through a map you couldn't see consciously. That inexplicable pull towards certain cities that made no logical sense. That equally inexplicable resistance to places that offered obvious advantages. Your body knew what your mind didn't. Which locations would support your development and which would trap you in frequencies that would slowly destroy what you were becoming. The portal's opening on December 25th, 2025 changes your relationship with geography fundamentally. The cities that rejected you before may suddenly become accessible. their previous hostility reversed by shifts in your permission levels. The cities that welcomed you may close their doors, having served their purpose in your development, and no longer aligned with operations you're being assigned to. And entirely new locations may begin calling to you with an intensity that feels like magnetic pull. Places you've never considered or even heard of, suddenly appearing in your awareness as destinations you must investigate. This is not about where you want to be. Your preferences, your comfort, your desire for stability in familiar surroundings. None of that matters to the forces determining your next geography. What matters is where your presence is required, where your specific combination of frequencies and capacities serves purposes that extend far beyond your personal life. You might be needed in a city experiencing transition that requires someone with your exact signature to stabilize certain timelines. You might be deployed to a location where your mere presence, conscious work not required, shifts probabilities in ways that affect thousands of people you'll never meet. The recognition protocols that cities use to assess incoming consciousness are becoming more sensitive, more precise. As your frequency elevates through activation occurring tonight, you'll trigger responses in urban environments that were previously dormant. Walking down streets you've walked 100 times may suddenly feel completely different. Buildings you passed without noticing may suddenly demand your attention. Neighborhoods that felt neutral may begin feeling either powerfully welcoming or aggressively hostile. You're not changing. The cities are responding to changes in your operational status. And here's what becomes most unsettling. You'll begin to feel yourself called to specific coordinates within cities, not just to the city itself. Particular intersections, specific buildings, exact geographical points that pull at you with urgency you can't explain. Standing on these points, you may feel energy moving through your body, like you've become a conduit for something flowing between earth and sky. You may experience downloads of information, sudden clarity about situations you've been confused about, or equally sudden confusion about things you thought you understood. These are activation points within urban grids, locations where your presence completes circuits that have been incomplete, waiting for someone carrying your specific permissions to arrive. The cities recognize you now. The land beneath concrete and steel recognizes you, and geography itself is about to become an active participant in operations you're only beginning to understand you're part of. Where you go next is not a choice in any conventional sense. It's an assignment issued by forces that see maps of reality you're still learning to perceive. The bloodline access key. Your ancestors were not saints whose virtue earned divine favor, nor were they legendary heroes whose deeds echo through history books. They were witnesses who stood at thresholds between worlds during moments when cosmic contracts were being written, and they signed their descendants into this conflict without asking permission, because permission across generations is not how these operations function. What they witnessed, what they agreed to, what they set in motion, all of it flows through blood, carried in genetic memory that activates not through conscious knowledge, but through lived experience that mirrors ancient patterns, hidden strengths that appear in your family line without explanation. That uncle who survived impossible circumstances, that grandmother who knew things she couldn't have learned, that cousin whose life took turns that defied probability. These weren't random genetic gifts or personality quirks. They were side effects of the ancient contract, manifestations of permissions and restrictions encoded into bloodline itself. The recurring curses that plague your family weren't mystical hexes cast by enemies. They were the price of access, the The balancing mechanism that ensures power granted through ancestral agreements comes with equivalent weight to prevent casual use. You inherited not just physical traits like eye color or height. You inherited unfinished tasks, silent burdens passed like locked chests through generations, that inexplicable anxiety that seems to have no personal origin, that specific fear that appeared in childhood without traumatic cause, that dream that recurs with variations but always the same emotional tone. These are ancestral memories bleeding through, experiences your blood carries even though your conscious mind never lived them. Victories that were almost achieved, enemies that were almost defeated, knowledge that was almost mastered, all of it incomplete, all of it waiting for the descendant who would have what previous generations lacked. The combination of suffering and stubbornness necessary to finish what they started. The 25/25 moon tonight reads blood memory with an accuracy that bypasses your conscious awareness entirely. It doesn't matter whether you acknowledge your ancestry, whether you've researched family history, whether you believe in inherited spiritual obligations. The moon's frequency interacts with your DNA like a key in a lock, activating sequences that have been dormant since your birth. Genetic switches flip, dormant capacities begin expressing themselves, and suddenly you'll find yourself capable of things you never trained for, knowing things you never studied, responding to situations with wisdom that seems to come from somewhere ancient. Whether you accept this consciously or spend years denying it makes no difference to the mechanism. The blood doesn't require your belief to function. It simply responds to frequencies that trigger protocols embedded generations ago by ancestors who made choices on behalf of children they would never meet. Some of those ancestors made wise choices that granted you access to protection and power. Others made desperate choices that bound you to debts and duties. All of it lives in you now, expressed through the particular challenges you face and the particular capacities you carry. Lineage loyalty is being accounted for tonight in ways most people never experience, because most people's bloodlines never intersected with operations of this magnitude. Your family line touched something vast at some point in the past, a war, a ritual, a moment of crisis where ordinary humans found themselves at the intersection of forces most never perceive. What they did in that moment, what they chose, what they agreed to, it echoed forward through time, shaping the lives of every descendant. Your struggles aren't just your struggles. Your battles aren't just your battles. You're carrying forward momentum from conflicts that began before your great-grandparents were born. The weight you felt your entire life, that sense of carrying something you couldn't name, that feeling of responsibility without clear object, that was always the bloodline burden, making itself known. You tried to dismiss it as personal anxiety or psychological issues requiring therapy, but the weight remained because it wasn't psychological. It was genealogical. It was the accumulated pressure of unfinished business passed through generations, waiting for the one who would be strong enough, stubborn enough, broken and rebuilt enough to actually complete the work. Tonight, as lunar frequencies interact with your genetic code, your family's unresolved histories lean toward you, as if expecting you to intercept something long overdue. Not metaphorically, literally. Ancestral patterns that have repeated through your family line for generations are reaching their completion point in your life. The addiction cycle that destroyed multiple family members. The poverty pattern that no amount of hard work seemed to break. The relationship betrayal that appeared in every generation. The early death that claimed family members at the same age repeatedly. These patterns terminate in you either by being perpetuated one final time or by being broken so completely they can never reform. You are the interception point, the one the bloodline has been building toward. Every ancestor who survived impossible odds, who kept the line going despite having every reason to stop, they were maintaining the continuity necessary for you to arrive at this exact moment with this exact combination of traits. You are not honoring them by being strong or successful. You are honoring them by being willing to carry what they couldn't resolve and having the stubborn audacity to believe you might succeed where they failed. The blood remembers what the mind forgets, and tonight, blood memory is being activated by lunar frequencies that don't require your understanding or cooperation to complete their function. The systems that bend for you when they shouldn't. There were failures that reversed themselves in ways that made absolutely no logical sense. Situations where defeat was certain and documented, and then suddenly circumstances shifted and the loss became a win without any action you could identify as the cause. Deadlines that should have been absolute were extended for reasons officials couldn't quite explain. Punishments that seemed inevitable somehow dissolved, paperwork lost, decisions reversed, consequences that were guaranteed simply evaporating. You assumed this was luck, that you'd somehow caught a break in a universe that usually didn't offer them. The truth sits heavier than luck. These were interventions triggered when your collapse would compromise broader operations that need you functional. Not luck, protection protocols. Bureaucracies that normally function with mechanical indifference suddenly became flexible around your case specifically. Algorithms designed to process everyone identically somehow produced exceptions when processing your data. Human decision-makers who pride themselves on consistency found themselves making choices they couldn't justify to colleagues, letting you through doors they'd closed to hundreds of others with equal or better qualifications. The systems bent because something in your signature triggered override protocols most system operators don't know exist within the structures they serve. You weren't getting special treatment because you were worthy or deserving. You were getting emergency preservation because your timeline discontinuation would create problems in dimensions the people helping you had no awareness of. That loan that got approved despite your credit being too poor to qualify. That job offer that came through even though you bombed the interview. That legal case that should have destroyed you but somehow got dismissed on technicalities. That medical crisis where doctors expected the worst, but you healed in ways they documented as unusual and unexpected. None of these were miracles. They were maintenance operations. Systems far larger than human institutions were tracking your vitality like medical equipment monitors a critical patient. When your readings indicated approaching termination, financial, legal, health, psychological termination, alerts went off in realms you have no conscious access to. Responses were deployed, not obvious interventions that would reveal the infrastructure, but subtle adjustments that looked like coincidence to anyone not trained to see the pattern. A bureaucrat has an intuitive hit to check your file again. An algorithm glitches in your favor. A judge feels unexpectedly lenient. A doctor decides to try one more treatment despite evidence suggesting futility. You assumed relief when these reversals occurred, grateful but confused about your sudden good fortune. The system saw emergency preservation, crisis management operations designed to keep crucial assets operational when conventional support structures fail. Because here's what you didn't understand. Your continuity mattered to operations that span timelines and dimensions. Your survival wasn't about you personally, it was about what your presence enables, what your specific frequency stabilizes, what your continued existence makes possible for plans you're not cleared to know about fully. In this portal phase, such protections become more deliberate, less subtle, because subtlety can no longer keep pace with the stakes. The forces that need you functional are running out of time to achieve objectives that require your participation. You're going to experience interventions that become increasingly obvious, increasingly difficult to dismiss as mere luck. Systems will bend so dramatically that you'll start questioning whether reality operates by the rules you were taught. Obstacles that should be permanent will simply dissolve. Enemies who seemed unstoppable will suddenly lose power to harm you. Resources you desperately need will appear through channels that make no logical sense. This escalation brings its own terror. When systems that should be impersonal start treating you as an exception, when reality itself seems to be conspiring in your favor, it forces recognition that you're part of something far larger than personal ambition or individual spiritual journey. Your infrastructure. You're a necessary component in operations that precede your birth and will continue after your death. Your preferences about this status are irrelevant. Your comfort with this role doesn't factor into the calculations. And there's a cost. Every intervention that saves you from consequence others would have to face creates debt in ledgers you can't see. Not karmic debt in the spiritual sense, operational debt. You're being preserved because you're needed, which means eventually you'll be deployed in situations where that need becomes explicit. The interventions aren't gifts, they're investments. Resources are being spent to keep you functional, which means returns are expected in forms you can't negotiate or decline. The protections will become more obvious, more frequent, more dramatic as the portal phase intensifies. You'll start feeling it clearly, the sense that something is watching out for you, but not with love or care in any personal sense, with necessity, with the cold calculation of forces that need a particular piece on the board and will spend whatever resources are required to keep that piece in play. It's simultaneously comforting and absolutely terrifying to realize you matter this much, not for who you are, but for what you enable by continuing to exist. The systems bend for you, but bent systems have a way of snapping back with equal force if you fail to serve the purposes that made the bending necessary. You're being preserved, protected, maintained, right up until the moment you're deployed. And deployment doesn't ask if you're ready. It simply begins. The ancient watchers who do not interfere until now, beings that have observed humanity like archivists studying manuscripts, maintaining distance so complete that most of human history unfolded without their direct touch, shifted their posture this year in ways that will echo through timelines for generations. For eons they watched, catalogued, recorded, but rarely intervened, bound by agreements and restrictions that treated human free will as a boundary not to be crossed casually. Their observation was academic, detached, the way scientists might observe bacteria cultures, interested but fundamentally separate. This year, that separation collapsed. Observation became involvement, and when entities that have remained still for ages begin moving, reality reorganizes itself to accommodate their motion. They rarely move precisely because their movement carries such weight. When they shift attention from passive observation to active engagement, timelines rewrite themselves in quiet earthquakes you feel internally before any external manifestation appears. Your dreams became stranger this year, didn't they? Populated with beings that felt ancient in ways you couldn't articulate, scenarios that carried gravitas beyond normal dream logic, messages delivered in languages you don't speak but somehow understood. Those weren't dreams in the conventional sense. Those were contact protocols, initial engagements between your consciousness and entities that have decided you're worth direct attention. You are not worshipped by them, and that reality lands heavier than any romantic mythology about ascended masters or cosmic parents watching over humanity with love. You are utilized by them, and that truth sits in your chest with weight that makes breathing difficult some nights. Their interest in you is strategic, functional, born from necessity rather than affection. They need what you can do, what you can access, what your particular combination of human limitation and activated permission makes possible. You're a tool, an instrument, a means to ends you may never fully comprehend, and there's no comfort available in pretending this is something it's not. Their non-interference policy wasn't mercy or respect for human autonomy. It was strategic patience, waiting for humans to develop specific capacities before engaging directly. Intervention, before preparation, would shatter human psyches, destroy the very qualities that make human consciousness useful for operations requiring beings capable of navigating paradox and holding contradiction. So they watched. Civilizations rose and fell. Individuals suffered and triumphed. All of it recorded with the emotional investment of someone taking laboratory notes, waiting for the moment when direct engagement would produce results rather than casualties. That moment arrived, not for humanity as a whole, but for specific individuals who've developed specific capacities through specific types of suffering. You're among them, though probably not for reasons you'd prefer. Not because you're enlightened or pure or particularly wise, but because you've been broken and rebuilt enough times that your consciousness has become flexible in ways rigid structures can't be. You can hold multiple contradictory truths simultaneously without fragmenting. You can function in uncertainty that would paralyze others. You can continue operating when all external guidance systems have been removed. These aren't virtues, they're utilities that make you useful to beings who operate in dimensions where normal human consciousness simply ceases to function. Their involvement brings complications you're only beginning to feel. Proximity to entities, this vast and ancient warps perception, distorts time, makes normal human concerns feel increasingly absurd and small. You'll struggle to care about things that used to matter deeply. Social expectations will feel like children's games. Career ambitions will seem pointless. Relationships that once felt significant will become difficult to invest in authentically. This isn't spiritual advancement. This is frequency incompatibility between your expanding awareness and the normal human bandwidth you're being pulled out of. Their interest in you is not emotional, but strategic. And strategy at their level operates across timelines and dimensions in ways that make your individual life feel like a single frame in a film too long to watch completely. Your birth, your suffering, your awakening, your death, all of it is tactical positioning in conflicts you perceive like ants perceive human wars fought across continents. You catch glimpses of boots, shadows, movements too vast to comprehend fully, and you're expected to function despite vertigo that comes from realizing how small your perception is and how large the structures you're caught within actually are. The 25/25 portal authorizes them to step closer, collapsing distance between myth and lived experience in ways that will make the next months extraordinarily difficult to navigate. Myth provided comfortable distance, allowed you to engage ancient wisdom as interesting stories rather than present reality. That distance is evaporating. The beings in your dreams will begin appearing in your waking life, not physically necessarily, but through synchronicities too precise to dismiss, through other humans who suddenly speak with wisdom that doesn't match their education or experience, through your own mouth as you hear yourself saying things you didn't consciously think. They do not interfere until interference becomes necessary. That threshold has been crossed. You're going to feel watched in ways that have nothing to do with surveillance technology or human monitoring. You're going to feel guided in ways that bypass your conscious decision-making, your body moving towards certain places and away from others before your mind understands why. You're going to find yourself speaking truths you didn't know you knew, writing words that seem to come from somewhere ancient, making choices that terrify you because you can't identify them as coming from your own will. And here's what nobody tells you about contact with entities this old and this vast. It doesn't elevate you into bliss or peace. It complicates everything. It makes being human feel like wearing clothes that don't fit anymore. It creates loneliness so profound that normal human connection stops reaching the depth where you actually exist. They didn't interfere before because interference has costs. They're interfering now because not interfering has greater costs. And you're paying the price of proximity to forces that were never meant to touch human consciousness directly. The final quiet before the new year does not mean peace. This silence settling around you like snow, this strange suspended feeling in the days between December 25th and January 1st is not the calm you've been praying for. It's not rest arriving after years of struggle. It's not peace rewarding your endurance. This is the sound of systems freezing in preparation for recalibration. The held breath before massive machinery shifts gears, the stillness that predators experience in the microsecond before they strike. You mistake it for peace because you're exhausted, desperate for relief, willing to interpret any break in constant pressure as evidence that things are finally getting better. But your body knows better. Your nervous system is registering this quiet as threat, keeping you alert in ways you can't fully explain. You may feel paused, suspended, outside normal time flow, watching your own life from a distance that feels simultaneously peaceful and deeply unsettling. That detachment is not numbness earned through suffering. That's not dissociation protecting you from overwhelming emotion. That is pre-deployment stabilization, your consciousness being moved into configurations necessary for operating under conditions you haven't encountered yet. Everything familiar is being loosened, not removed but made less solid, less fixed, so that when rapid change arrives, you won't shatter from the impact. The next year will not be about personal improvement, not about losing weight, developing better habits, reading more books, being kinder or more patient or more spiritual. Those are peacetime goals, civilian objectives appropriate for lives that unfold within stable social structures with predictable rules. What's approaching is not personal development season. What's approaching is structural consequence. The moment when everything theoretical becomes applied, when all the preparation that felt pointless reveals its purpose, when you're thrust into situations requiring every capacity you've developed through years of suffering you couldn't understand while enduring it. Everything that once merely hurt will now reveal its purpose, and the revelation will be more disturbing than the original pain. That betrayal that shattered your ability to trust. You'll discover it was surgical removal of naivety that would have gotten you killed in situations you're about to enter. That financial collapse that destroyed your stability, you'll realize it was forced training in operating without security. Preparation for timelines where stability is a luxury you won't have access to. That health crisis that brought you to the edge of death. You'll understand it was familiarization with mortality, removing the fear that would have paralyzed you when you needed to make decisions that risk everything. Everything that once felt like coincidence will expose its architects, and you're going to be furious when you see clearly how orchestrated your suffering has been. The randomness you believed in will reveal itself as careful design. The free will you thought you were exercising will show its boundaries. The choices you made that felt entirely yours will demonstrate how thoroughly you were guided towards specific outcomes. This revelation creates a rage most people never experience. The rage of realizing you were played, moved like a chess piece, suffering engineered for purposes you weren't consulted about. But here's what tempers the rage. You'll also see what would have happened without the orchestration. Alternate timelines where you made different choices will become visible in flashes of knowing that feel like recovered memory. You'll see yourself destroyed by comfort you were denied, killed by success that came too early, broken by love you weren't ready for, lost in paths that seemed better but led to absolute termination. The orchestration that felt like violation will reveal itself as protection, not the gentle kind, but the harsh mercy of surgeons cutting away tissue to save the patient. The quiet you're experiencing now is the last moment before everything theoretical becomes practical. You've spent years learning, growing, processing, understanding. You've developed capacities you didn't have before. You've built strength through endurance. You've gained wisdom through confusion. All of it felt academic, internal, personal, growth for growth's sake, healing for healing's sake, awareness for awareness's sake. That phase is ending. In the new year, everything you've developed will be put to use, deployed in situations that will require every tool you've built and probably more than you currently possess. And in the records of the unseen war, December 25th, 2025 will forever be listed as the moment you officially stopped being background. For years, you were in training zones, protected areas where mistakes had consequences, but not fatal ones, where failure meant learning rather than elimination. That designation is being removed from your file. You're being moved into active operation zones where mistakes compound, where failure has permanent costs, where the decisions you make affect not just your personal timeline, but intersecting timelines you won't perceive directly. This quiet is not peace. This is loading time. Systems around you and within you are processing massive amounts of data, integrating new permissions, updating operational parameters, preparing for deployment conditions. You feel suspended because you are held between what you were and what you're becoming, caught in transition that can't be rushed but also can't last indefinitely. Something is coming. You feel it in your bones. You feel it in dreams that wake you at hours between midnight and dawn. You feel it in the way time has started behaving strangely. Days that feel like weeks, hours that pass like minutes. The new year doesn't mark a fresh start or a chance to do better. The new year marks activation of everything that has been building toward this point. Ready or not, prepared or not, understanding completely or still confused. The quiet ends. The waiting is over. And December 25th, 2025 will be remembered as the last moment you could pretend you didn't know exactly how high the stakes actually are. The portal has opened, chosen one. The frequencies activated tonight will continue their work, whether you consciously cooperate or spend years resisting what you can no longer deny. The signature in your soul is glowing in spectrums that cannot be hidden anymore, broadcasting your location and your capacity to every force that has been tracking your development. The protection that kept you blind has been lifted. The training phase is complete. And somewhere in archives that span dimensions beyond your current perception, your file has been moved from one category to another, from potential to active, from preparation to deployment, from protected to operational. What comes next will not look like anything you expected, and certainly not like anything you would have chosen if given options. The path ahead is not about fulfillment or happiness or achieving dreams you held before tonight. Relationships that once felt significant will become difficult to invest in authentically. This isn't spiritual advancement. This is frequency incompatibility between your expanding awareness and the normal human bandwidth you're being pulled out of. Their interest in you is not emotional, but strategic, and strategy at their level operates across timelines and dimensions in ways that make your individual life feel like a single frame in a film too long to watch completely. Your birth, your suffering, your awakening, your death, all of it is tactical positioning in conflicts you perceive like ants perceive human wars fought across continents. You catch glimpses of boots, shadows, movements too vast to comprehend fully, and you're expected to function despite vertigo that comes from realizing how small your perception is and how large the structures you're caught within actually are. The 25/25 portal authorizes them to step closer, collapsing distance between myth and lived experience in ways that will make the next months extraordinarily difficult to navigate. Myth provided comfortable distance, allowed you to engage ancient wisdom as interesting stories rather than present reality. That distance is evaporating. The beings in your dreams will begin appearing in your waking life, not physically necessarily, but through synchronicities too precise to dismiss, through other humans who suddenly speak with wisdom that doesn't match their education or experience, through your own mouth as you hear yourself saying things you didn't consciously think. They do not interfere until interference becomes necessary. That threshold has been crossed. You're going to feel watched in ways that have nothing to do with surveillance technology or human monitoring. You're going to feel guided in ways that bypass your conscious decision-making, your body moving towards certain places and away from others before your mind understands why. You're going to find yourself speaking truths you didn't know you knew, writing words that seem to come from somewhere ancient, making choices that terrify you because you can't identify them as coming from your own will. And here's what nobody tells you about contact with entities this old and this vast. It doesn't elevate you into bliss or peace. It complicates everything. It makes being human feel like wearing clothes that don't fit anymore. It creates loneliness so profound that normal human connection stops reaching the depth where you actually exist. They didn't interfere before because interference has costs. They're interfering now because not interfering has greater costs. And you're paying the price of proximity to forces that were never meant to touch human consciousness directly. The final quiet before the new year does not mean peace. This silence settling around you like snow, this strange suspended feeling in the days between December 25th and January 1st, is not the calm you've been praying for. It's not rest arriving after years of struggle. It's not peace rewarding your endurance. This is the sound of systems freezing in preparation for recalibration. The held breath before massive machinery shifts gears, the stillness that predators experience in the microsecond before they strike. You mistake it for peace because you're exhausted, desperate for relief, willing to interpret any break in constant pressure as evidence that things are finally getting better. But your body knows better. Your nervous system is registering this quiet as threat, keeping you alert in ways you can't fully explain. You may feel paused, suspended, outside normal time flow, watching your own life from a distance that feels simultaneously peaceful and deeply unsettling. That detachment is not numbness earned through suffering. That's not dissociation protecting you from overwhelming emotion. That is pre-deployment stabilization, your consciousness being moved into configurations necessary for operating under conditions you haven't encountered yet. Everything familiar is being loosened, not removed but made less solid, less fixed, so that when rapid change arrives, you won't shatter from the impact. The next year will not be about personal improvement, not about losing weight, developing better habits, reading more books, being kinder or more patient or more spiritual. Those are peacetime goals, civilian objectives appropriate for lives that unfold within stable social structures with predictable rules. What's approaching is not personal development season. What's approaching is structural consequence. The moment when everything theoretical becomes applied, when all the preparation that felt pointless reveals its purpose, when you're thrust into situations requiring every capacity you've developed through years of suffering you couldn't understand while enduring it. Everything that once merely hurt will now reveal its purpose, and the revelation will be more disturbing than the original pain. Those were civilian aspirations, beautiful and valid for lives that unfold within protected boundaries. Your life no longer has those boundaries. You've been cleared for territories where the old rules don't apply, and new rules haven't been fully explained because they can't be explained. They can only be experienced. You will be tempted to retreat, to convince yourself this is all metaphor or psychological projection, that nothing real has actually changed, and you can return to normal life with normal concerns. That option closed the moment you recognize yourself in these words. Recognition is activation. Reading this transmission was not passive information consumption. It was authorization, acceptance, whether you intended it that way or not. The watchers are closer now. The enemies are visible. The cities are responding. The systems are bending. And you're standing at the threshold of something vast and terrifying and absolutely unavoidable. Everything you've survived has prepared you for what comes next. Whether that preparation is sufficient remains to be seen. But the testing phase is over. The deployment phase has begun. And in the silence between December and January, in these final days of 2025, you have one responsibility above all others. Remember that you were chosen not because you're perfect, but because you're unbreakable. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to function without them. Not because you're fearless, but because your fear hasn't stopped you yet. The protocol is active. The shift is final. And there is no going back to who you were before you understood what December 25th, 2025 actually meant. The war is no longer hidden. Welcome to the front lines, chosen one. Your real work begins now.